Hey lovelies, so I'm just going to get a few of these gessoed up. So the ones I want to probably paint on. So yeah, it depends on what you want to apply to it, because obviously if you're going to stick anything to it, then you don't want to waste it with gesso. But that's a great thing about having so many cards ready there to use, is that you can gesso some, you can leave others plain, ready for whatever it is you're going to do to it. So with swatching, you might cut something out so you don't need it gessoed, or you might want to paint straight on it, so you might want it gessoed. And the other option is to, well, I'll show you in a moment, getting ahead of myself. I love index cards so much, as you know. So I actually like showing the text and lines and such on an index card, just like when I use book pages on my journals. I like the text showing through. I don't use books as just a substrate, but actually, using the personality of the book, the text and the type of text coming through. So I like the personality. Let's go with that. I've just thought that personality. Let's go with that. The personality of the cards coming through. However, if you're going to paint a very light colour, then you may not want any of the grey or whatever colour you've got on your cards to interfere, especially when you're doing swatches. I mean, if you're just doing something fun, it might be just a fun background, like when you have a book page and you have text, it's fun for that to be shown through. But if you're doing swatching and you really want to see your colours clearly, and especially, like I said, if you're doing a light colour, then you don't want any grey or black or whatever to change your colour, basically. Okay, so the other option, of course, is to just use ordinary paper, whether it's cheap copy paper or actually a really nice watercolour paper. If you want to swatch watercolours, then by all means use a watercolour paper, and that's going to be a thicker index card, but that's not a problem, is it? And you would paint your colour on there, or scribble or whatever, so roughly you have an idea of the size, or you can just do a whole page. You might be playing with colours and you like it. So let's say I was doing this, I could colour this in. I just picked up my pencil because it's the first thing. It was easier than getting paint out. So you do this, and this is fine as well. It's pencil, isn't it? Roughly cut out. If you're working larger than the card, then you'll always have plenty. This is only like a very quick example. And then whichever, if you're using your index cards, obviously, where you're using that to write the details, then you can cover that. But if you're trying to get rid of that so you can have your own space to do your own text and such, obviously made that choice. But that's it, you just glue it on. So I would apply some matte medium, some stick glue, whatever I wanted. Glue that on. Let it dry, let it dry, and then cut around it. Okay, so yeah, I would just cut this along, glue it on, and you have an instant swatch that you don't have to fuss around your card if you didn't want to. it's also not just fussing around your card. It could be, like I said, the paper that you want to use. You might want to use your watercolor and stick that on there. Or actually, I mean, if I used watercolor, I would say I wouldn't even stick it on an index card. I would make an index card out of the watercolor bit of card, because it is so thick. You don't need to stick it on there, do you? But I would use that as a template then, and trace around it and then cut it out, and then that's your index card. But obviously it's very thin paper, copy paper, that sort of thing, and this is a great way of doing it. And it just means you can have a play on your paper and not worry about index card. Not that you should ever worry about index cards. You can always cover it, and it's just one bit of card. But yes, if you can imagine that stuck on, obviously I haven't done it properly, but that's your swatch. And it's just fun because you can just play on there. So it's a very fast and easy way to do a swatch. But if we are working straight on our cards, then a little bit of gesso is great. If you want, and also, you know, they are thin cards. They're not, you know, they're thicker than 80-gram paper, but they're still fairly thin. So if you're going to apply something heavy on it, you might want the gesso to just give it a little bit more strength to the substrate. You may want the lines to show through, but still want a bit more to it. So you could apply a layer of paper on top of it, or you could apply transparent gesso as well to give it a bit of a ground. My transparent gesso has a little bit of texture to it, so it's particularly good for, say, watercolor or something. If you just don't want, you know, gesso can be so slippery, which gives amazing effects for so many things, but you may not want that effect. Anyway, you know gesso. I don't have to explain gesso to you. But if you're a beginner, then you might just want to know that. And I have an enormous tub of gesso. I don't use gesso very much. I like working straight onto things if at all possible. If sometimes I want a bit of coverage, or sometimes the paper is too absorbent, then the gesso, like for instance, I use water media, so I don't want, some papers are so absorbent, you know, my watercolors have just sucked in and I've not been able to blend. So even though gesso is not really for watercolors, it does give great effects. So if you don't want anything soaking into your card, gesso is an option. And any paint really. Gesso really is just like a white acrylic paint. It's nothing really that fancy, but it's cheap, you know, rather than using your good white paint as such. So yes, you've got coverage, you've got a better substrate to work on, a little bit more weight and substance to your substrate. So it has its purposes, and yeah, so even if I don't use it too much, occasionally it does come in. But this tub I've had for so long because it's a big tub. Is it a litre? It's 1 litre, yeah. I've had this for 4 years. Seriously, that's how little gesso I use. So I'm just going to do one more. This gesso, PBO, I'm not a big fan of PBO products, so I'm not especially recommending this. It just happened to be the one I bought. It was cheap. I was looking for, you know, inexpensive budget stuff at the time, and it's what I bought. It's not a great coverage, so if you really want to cover your stuff, then I would go for something, a different brand. However, not being great coverage is also great as well, because sometimes I just want a thin layer just to give it that little bit of, you know, the extra substance to it, or not. I don't want things, you know, soaking into the paper. But if you actually want to cover what's behind it, then yeah, a different brand I will go to. I'm sure members of the rolARTdex community will have their favourite gesso they can chat about and recommend. Okay, I'm just going to do the 3. I've got a couple more that I did earlier on. I got a bit of paint on this, bit of gesso, so why not just add a bit there. That just helps me have a few ready to go. And if you're ever a little bit sort of stuck for creativity or don't have a lot of time, this is the sort of thing you can just do. You know, you've got 5 minutes before you take the kids to school or before you have to go pick them up, or before you head to the dentist. And it's a little bit relaxing. You just get a little bit of gesso on. Prep is always a great thing to do when you've only got a short amount of time. So there we are. They're done. We need to let them dry, and then let's head to our swatching. So another option is typewriting, and this, you could also do this with printing, so it's 2 options. If you know, are quite savvy with your printer software and you feel you can align things well, or are happy to do trial runs and that, but let's prep the paper. Just get yourself your usual paper that you use, your A4 in the UK or letter paper in the US, and get yourself a card, and you're just going to trace around it. And, you know, by all means be frugal and make the most you can, and try and fit as many as you can in, or do whatever you like. This isn't perfect, this is just so you know where you're going. This is the template in it, you know. I would leave a little space just to give yourself room for cutting and getting things right. Okay, so with A4 I can fit 2 side by side. Depends on what paper you're using. Okay, so you just want to fill your paper up with this. And I mean, it shouldn't be too difficult on a printer, especially if it's easy like this, where you get 2 side by side. Obviously, if you're starting to do this, then it's going to get fussy. But if you can get 2 side by side, you can do, you know, use your lowest setting, quality setting, and do a sort of a practice run and for alignment. And it may not be too bad, especially if you want to do this for all your cards and you like the nice printed look, then yeah, by all means do that. By all means work out your printer. If you join my members group, I've got PDF labels for you to print out. And that's the other option. They're not the shape of your card. They are so it's a different option. It's not really part of this, but because I'm talking about printers, yeah, they sort of you cut them out and you fit them in there. So everyone who joins the rolARTdex tribe, rolARTdex members group, you've got, I don't know, there might be about 10. There's absolutely loads of different varieties that I've prepped for you to just print out, cut out, stick on. Super easy. Okay, done that. So this is great if you like the typewritten look. You can also have a, you know, typewriter font in your printer, can't you? But this is very much a typewritten look, especially these retro typewriters where they're not perfect at all, but you love that look. You want to give them your cards a bit of a retro look. It's also great for very idiosyncratic dexing. So the labels are great for when you do that sort of thing over and over again, but you might have just odd, which you will have, you know, we're not going to have the same thing over and over again. We're going to have sort of miscellaneous and different things that that we'll make and do and want to index, and this is great just to do just exactly what it is that you want to put on there, rather than just the you know, the formula of the label. Okay, I have no idea why it stopped filming or it stopped recording, because I have plenty of storage on my phone. So nothing too exciting missed on this though. I just said cut it out once you've done that. I mean, obviously you could fill this all out first. That will make more sense, or at least go 2 by 2 so you can get it nicely into your typewriter. And if you printer, you want to do it all at once. But that's it. All I did was cut it out, covered the paper with glue, stuck it on, and then just trimmed it with my scissors. I'm saying how these are never perfect, and it's absolutely fine because you just do not see this on your rotary once it's all done. And then trim it all the way around, and you're done. Preferably let it dry and then cut it out, but easy peasy. There you go. You've got a typewritten index card. Obviously something that types better than my typewriter. I love my typewriter because I use it for mixed media purposes, but for functional purpose, no, it's something better. But yeah, that's a really cool option. Okay, staying with the sort of sticking paper on the back idea is graph paper. So I've got some isometric graph paper here, which just has all these cool lines, and I haven't got a huge amount of use for it, so I say I haven't got use for it. It's great journal paper. It's just a cool design on the back. I just don't ever go and grab it. And then grid paper. Now this is the smallest one I have because I'm using the large ones for just fun mixed media stuff. And you know, Sophie DeCourt, she got me onto the graph paper. She uses it in her journals. I used it for my 100 pinks, which is so cool. So for journal paper, I think it's really fab. I actually have the 15mm one for my 100 pinks, so it's a nice size for, well, for graphing things. So any sort of and lined paper, just ordinary lined paper is great as well. Bujo paper, you know, the dot grid paper, that's great as well. This is really great for if you're a little bit like me and a bit of a journal addict and you have all sorts of journals and notebooks and all that sort of stuff that's lined and dotted and gridded and all sorts, and you're not making use of them. So this is an idea. You can make use of that paper for this. So it's only the same thing as that. You could typewrite. You can typewrite on these. You can print on this. It just gives it sort of a nice, graphy, neat sort of appearance. And it's also a great way of covering the paper if you want to do that. One of the reasons I would want to cover the back, not necessarily, but I know that I've done this a lot, things like this. I've made a mess of the back because, you know, you're throwing paint around and stuff. It can happen. Sorry, if you think of it the other way around, as if this was my index card, some sort of technique on here, and then I was going to use this to put my information on, and it's become a bit of a mess. I don't mind too much because it's mixed media and I'm happy for that, to have a bit of decoration where I put my writing. But if it's a bit too much or too messy, or you don't like that look, then covering the back is another option, as much as for, you know, functional reasons. But it just gives you some nice lines to write on. It just gives it a nice sort of finish. Bit of graph paper, I think. And my accent is sort of, it doesn't know what to do. Graph paper? What do I say? Graph. I think graph, I picked it up from when I lived in Leicester in the UK. I think I say graph. Yeah, graph paper. That makes more sense. I was like, what do I say? Pick up accents when you move about. There we are. So you can see that it's a little bit too big, and that's great because then that gives me room to cut it off. So always best to let it dry. I do have a non-stick scissors, but it's a nuisance if it's sticky. So we're just going to let it dry. and then trim it up. While that's drying, I'll just do one of these because why not? It's fun. Okay, so another one that I'm going to leave dry. If you're wondering why I'm using my Tombow Aqua, no reason at all. It's just my glue stick. I would normally use a glue stick. My glue stick is at my other desk, so that's the only reason. So again, you could use these to type, or you can just go ahead and write things down. I would have a smaller grid for this, but it might be the paper you have, so why not? Use what you have. So if I'm happy with just my not so neat writing, then so if it's time for space, I would just leave these labels out completely and just maybe write what I need to write down, like Daniel Smith Opera Rose. I don't need to write down brand, colour, you know, all the fanciness. So paper covering. I've gone over why that's a good reason, a good reason to use paper covering if you've got a mess at the back, if you don't like seeing all those details, if you want to cover it quickly without just more product and you've got this excess paper, then why not? And also, of course, if you want to type or if you want to print. And it just looks neat, doesn't it? Just having those grid. I just really, really like how neat that looks. Okay, so now we've got stamping. Oh, I do love stamping. And it obviously depends on what stamps you have. So for our rolARTdex, for our dexing, the main stamps, if you wanted to buy stamps for it, I wouldn't say that's at all necessary, but I would say the ones to get would be some sort of frame type stamps. Now, getting a frame that is just the right size, you just might be lucky. You might just have something. I don't think I have anything like that. They're all quite smallish, and that's the largest one I have. So you could do it different ways. You could use small ones and repeat them for each section, that sort of thing, but I'll show you another way of getting just the outside. It's just a way of getting something neat onto your onto the back. So I've got this sort of framey ones. I don't think that one's a little bit cute. What was I looking for? Where is it? There it is. So these two framey ones. And right, let me show you that first. I think I'm going to run over my gesso ones for now, so I'm going to start doing on both sides just to give you an idea of what it looks like. Although it looks better with the white when you're going to add things, but still. Okay, so as I said, you could use one stamp multiple times. I don't feel I'm going to like this because it's just too thick, but there you go. I mean, practice on a scrap bit of paper and see what it is you need to write down for that card. And then, you know, with the stamps, just put on a scrap bit of paper and just see, does it all fit? Or is it going to make an absolute mess of the back of your index card? Okay, so you could do that. You could do multiple small stamps like that, and then you could put your info here. So I've got Windsor and Newton, and obviously I've got, do I have one that's even smaller? I think that's the smallest one. Windsor and Newton, Opera Rose. Say the technique was watercolour over gesso, and then I could have some notes, you know, leave watercolour to dry before removing stencil. Something like that. It's just to give you an idea. I mean, that looks fine. That looks okay. It's quite fun. You can do obviously different colours. You don't have to do black ink. Okay, another way, because, you know, like I said, you may want to cover the whole thing, but it's just too small. I'm just going to take this size. Oh, I wish it was just a little smaller. All right, well, this one would work, but it's actually, it's a fiddly thing to do. So it would be better if you had a clear one like this. Let's grab a bit of paper. I'm covering up the lines because it's going to be the wrong way. So there you go. If your stamp is too small, you can at least get a nice little, almost like brackets rather than an actual frame. It's just a fun way of doing it. You could, if you wanted to, sort of get rid of those bits there, and then make the line, but I'm not going to do that. I think that's going to mess it up. I think that's the easiest way to do it. It just gives you a little bit of something. You've got some gesso on there. You've got this, even if you just have white paper. So any sort of frame, any type of frame that you have, it's just a nice way of, sort of like we do with the watercolours, you know, we're making frames. Just framing that back just gives it something, to hold on to. Okay, so simple frame stamps. And there are, of course, really funky frames you can get. I know I have some more somewhere. Anything like that is just like, just framing what you're going to write in some way, just holding it in some way. I've got little ones, but yeah, if you got some larger ones, then there's also sort of flags, not these with the fancy things, but I've got these blank ones. I mean, I use these in my like Hobonichi, my sort of diaries, but you can have these blank ones. Let's get that somewhere where they could be a flag or just a shape. It could be a round shape, an oval shape, a distinctive sort of tag shape. I'm not going to do it black. So it's distressing, which is not the best for this sort of thing, but it's fine because it's going to be mottled. Where's my archival ink? Let me find my archival ink. There we go. This is better. Just stressing it's watery, so So something that's not too dark that your black pen is going to work on. Be nice. Oh, that is dark. It's what you've got to test. But it's not the end of the world if you had done that on your page. I forgot, because it's not gessoed. It's going to just soak up all that ink. So this sort of prickly pear. How cool is that? So something like that, or if you've got like a tag. I mean, these are just too tiny really to write things on, but you get the idea. And then it'll be, you know, just writing in there. And if it's too dark, use your whites. So again, you could use your black if you want to keep everything very black and white. You know, I said don't use black, but absolutely if you're prepared to use white pen. So that's an idea. And obviously if you had a nice long one, that's the longest I have. I say that, but I've got these little ones slightly longer. So these are super thin, but that would be really nice for writing. Absolutely could do. So yeah, you have these sort of tags. So you have the ones that just is like, again, like a frame, you know, these flag or ribbon sort of shapes, or you have these full color ones. So that's an idea. And then the other way, I thought that was really fun. And if you do sort of diary journaling, you might have these with like that same memo. I mean, these are really small, but you could, you know, you could do things like that. But what I thought was a fun way of doing it was similar to what we're going to do in the actual watercolor class. But if you had shapes like anything, especially if it's arty sort of shapes, you know, an ink bottle, a palette. I do have a palette one somewhere. You could use them. So basically objects is what I'm saying. So inking objects is another way to frame your information. Obviously not great for don't know why I've done a second one, but obviously not great for if you've got lots and lots of notes, but you could do it half or part I should say. So for instance, this one could be the product. So I'm going to put here Daniel Smith Opera Rose, and then I could have notes, and I could have all my information. Okay, so you get a sort of look like that, which I think is just so fun. I love the idea that my colour is written down on this little ink bottle. That is just so fun. It's just all fun ideas that, you know, are completely unnecessary. But fun is fun, and why not have more fun? You know, have more fun in life. That's what we need. Okay, so you have any sort of stamp, any sort of object stamp that has a bit of space. I mean, this typewriter, that would be so fun as well. I think it's a little bit big, but it might just fit. That would be fun as well as a typewriter to have, you know, something written on there. But yeah, anything's object. These are just more little tags. These are really tiny, so I wouldn't use these. But if you have larger versions of this, just, you know, you could have something in your vintage collection. You could have something if you do diaries. Yeah, if you don't do any sort of stamping, you'll have something that can work as a sort of frame or container of such to hold your information. Yeah, I love my stamps. So continuing with stamps would be simply to stamp out your words. Now, if it's something like you just writing the brand and colour, you could do all of that stamped. Obviously something like notes and technique in that, if that's going to get, you know, ridiculous, way too much to do. Do I have a blank one here? Okay, but at the very least you could possibly get your labels, your categories done. just gives you a little bit of neatness, a little bit of something, rather than if you just didn't want just, you know, your own handwriting there looking boring, and you think, oh, I want a bit of something, then by all means stamp out the categories. So just simple as that. Just gives it a little bit some, you know, a little bit of structure to what you're going to do, and then go ahead and write. And rather than just your writing, if you feel like it's just too boring, you just got a bit of something going on there, you know, and notes would have been nice. I'm going to do it just because I want to see it. And I think you might want to see it. There we are. It just feels more complete. Okay, so I love stamped words, and I would love it if I could just stamp the whole thing, but it would just, you know, how long that would take would be just ridiculous. But hey, you might just be having that chilled out time and are happy to just quietly stamp away and get everything done. At the same time, you know, there is a limit to how much you can fit, so you just have to work with that, see how much you need to put on there. Okay, I think that's all my ideas. If I think of something else, I've forgotten something, there's a good chance I've forgotten something. I was just looking at my notes, but they're so messy. So if I've forgotten something, I will come back and always add. But we have, this is what I found that I've done earlier, and this is just me writing things down, and in this circling it just to differentiate the different information, but it could just be scribbling down. Like I said at the beginning, you can just do this and just not fuss with your card at all. An object stamp, a ticket, that would be another fun stamp to do and write in as well. Stamp letters, washi tape techniques, or masking tape technique, whatever you want to call it. I feel like one is on the other side. No, I'm not sure. Where is it? Oh, there it is. That was the inside one. And then we have the different sort of graph papers if you want to cover. Just ordinary paper, but with some typewriting or some printer. Label type stamps. Scripting. So there's no excuse, no there is, of course there is, because you don't have to do it, but there's no excuse to say that labeling can be boring. You can certainly make it fun and make it your own, and everybody will be different. Some people just want something super neat and tidy, and I can totally understand that, and some people want super fun and more mixed media, and that's good as well. You could choose one, you could choose several, just do different things. The only thing I would say about when you get messy with watercolor or anything is that just be mindful of the fact that, you know, like this, if you've already done something lovely on this side and you don't want, you know, suddenly put paint on here, that's going to leak into here and it's going to mess up this side. So it is just something worth keeping in mind, that the messier you get, well, the messier you get. So I love all these ideas. I will probably do a mixture of some, because I don't know, it's just fun. I mean, I really love this because it makes me think of indexing. It makes me think of library cards, old library cards, which is why I love my typewriter for that. But my typewriter just can't cope. This won't be functional, and that's why it has to be above everything else. So yeah, I haven't 100% decided what I'm doing. So I'm looking forward to finding out what I do. I'm looking forward to finding out what you do. Bye. Hope that was inspirational for you, and you're inspired to get cracking on your labels. And like I said, if you've only just started and the other videos haven't dropped, then just come back to this later and it will all make much more sense and be much more applicable. Okay, bye.